AJ, can I just ask you, I've got sort of the opposite
Yep.
to Hiroko.
In what way?
Well, I've got a brother with a mental disorder, and he's 50, and he lived with my mum and dad until my dad passed over, which was about 2 or 3 years ago. And the family home got sold, so he had to then move out on his own. So we went and bought a house for him to live in because he had nowhere to live. And now he decides not to pay the rent. So then we struggle to try to pay for this home. And we pay for his electricity.
Why?
Sorry?
Why?
Because he has a mental disorder.
So
and he has never lived on his own. He's never taken responsibility for himself. So I do try to work with him.
Can he watch a telly?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, he can watch a television.
Yeah, and he can sit there and watch a telly for how long?
Well, I think he might have sold it, actually. He sells everything.
Yeah.
So he's got the bare, like a bed and a washing machine.
Yep.
But continually ringing and asking for $50 or...
Yep.
So, I just feel that...
So from a developmental perspective, he's a child, right?
Yes.
So how would you treat a child who's doing this?
Well, that's the...
If your child came every day and asked you for $50, would you give it $50?
No.
So why are you doing it with your brother?
Well, it's not every day, but it's every, say, once a month or once every couple of months.
Oh, it's not very often, but yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why you're renting? You're paying for the rent of his house.
Yes, we're paying for the payments of the home.
Yeah.
Like it's our home, but he's living in it.
So it's your home. You own it.
We bought it for him to live in.
So he doesn't own it. You do.
That's right. To have a roof over his head, otherwise he'd be on the streets.
So he's not paying his rent to you.
Well, it was getting directly taken out of his account into ours, but then he closed his account out so he could have the rent money.
Yeah.
So he's got addictions.
I agree.
Yeah.
So he's not taking responsibility.
No.
And what would you do with a child who does that?
Well, that's the hard... this is where I'm finding it very difficult because
if you had
his
a 3-year-old child, who
Yep.
wasn't taking responsibility,
Yep.
what would you do?
Well, I wouldn't give it to him.
Right.
I wouldn't give him the money.
Right.
So am I doing... But I feel maybe I'm doing the wrong thing by having the house for him. I don't know.
You certainly are.
This is where it's not loving. I thought it was... I felt, first of all, it was loving, to look after him.
It's loving to look after him as long as he has gratitude for being looked after.
Yeah.
If he doesn't want to pay for the rent, but he could pay for the rent because he gets an allowance, which he does from the government, right?
He does, yes.
And he's not willing to pay rent, which everybody else on the planet has to do.
That's right.
That's right. And he has to look after himself at some point. He's looking after himself in other ways.
Yes.
He's obviously getting food for himself and eating, and he's doing other things to look after himself.
Yep.
So you've taught him that it's okay for him to not look after himself financially.
Well, this is it. My dad and my mum have probably, and I'm following suit.
I agree.
And I'm following exactly what my father was doing.
I agree.
And I'm
and
just
you'd
realising...
feel terribly guilty. For what reason, if you stopped?
Because I don't want to see him... go into a mental institution.
Yeah, but why? Why don't you want to?
Because I probably don't want to feel...
About what?
The grief associated with all of that.
Why would you have grief about it?
Because I have been in there. He has been in those places, and I have been in there.
Yeah.
And I've been in Long Bay Jail with him.
Yeah.
And
why would you feel grief about it?
Because they're not nice places to be.
I agree, but why would you feel grief about it?
Because...
So I wouldn't feel grief about that.
Yeah. because I felt that he was someone I loved. He was a brother. So I have 5 other siblings, and they won't have a thing to do with him.
And no wonder, yeah. You know what the problem is? The real problem that you don't want to face?
Yep.
You've still got an umbilical cord with your parents.
Okay, yep. Yeah, and that's why I thought
And
it
you're
was the
being
opposite.
completely driven
Yeah.
by what your parents, who are now dead, right?
Yes, yes.
But you're being completely driven by your connection to them
Yep.
to do things which would not be loving to do to any person.
Yeah.
But you are accepting their definition of what is loving, and you've got an umbilical cord still connected with your parents even though they died. That's the reason why you're doing it. You're doing it to please your parents.
I don't know.
You ask a question that you don't want to hear the answer to it, but anyway,
okay.
that's fine.
No, well, thank you, AJ. Thank you. Yes.
Why do you feel any guilt at all? You've done your best. You've done it over many years now. It's not working. He's taking advantage of you. You have to draw the line in the sand somewhere.
I guess because it's family, and that's my thing.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as family. What are you talking about?
Yeah. And I'm beginning to realise...
Well, can I clarify that there's no such thing as family? We are all family.
Yeah.
You wouldn't treat me this way. If I rented your house and then I'd refused to pay the rent, what would you do with me?
Well, I'd want to know why before I kicked you out.
You'd want to know why.
Yeah. I couldn't kick you out.
I disagree. You would kick me out.
Yeah. Well, we have had that happen to us, haven't we, over time? Yeah. So it's definitely not a loving thing that I'm doing.
So why would you treat me
realise
differently than treat your brother? Why? Because you have an unloving viewpoint of what is family. That's the only reason why you're doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense? And you don't see that at all at this point.
You're saying I have an unloving viewpoint of family?
Of what is family? Your definition of family is flawed.
Okay.
Yep. And pretty much most people's definition of family on this planet is flawed. There's going to be a time in your future, you know, that you might not never see your mum, dad, sister, brother for 1,000 years. Not because you're angry with them, but because you just don't see them because you're not interested in the same things. And you will actually start seeing every single person around you as your sister, brother, mother, father. You won't. Why do you have a favouritism towards your family?
I guess it's like an addiction.
It is.
Maybe.
I agree.
Yes,
it is.
I'm realising now that it has been an addiction.
Yeah. So what do you get out of it? What do you get out of this definition of family?
Well, I guess I always thought I was getting love, but I'm definitely not.
Well, you're definitely not getting love from your brother.
No.
No.
Definitely
So what else
not.
do you get out of the definition of family? There's got to be something else because you're still doing what you're doing. So there's got to be something else you're getting out of the definition of family that you're holding on to.
Maybe a feeling of being wanted?
You don't feel that feeling very strongly though, do you?
No, not really.
So now what you're doing is you're not feeling and you're guessing. Let yourself feel what you get out of it.
I think that's probably a process I'm going to have to go into, I think.
No, you can do it right now. What's the thing you get out of it?
I can't,
Can you see you must get something out of it? Otherwise you wouldn't do it. In the past, you've very rarely done anything that you don't get something out of. So you must be getting something out of this. What do you reckon it might be? I've already given you many clues as to what it is. You get the world and your parents' approval doing this. And you would think you're a terrible person if you don't do it.
Well, the one thing, I don't get approval from the family. They
No,
are so
no.
against,
I agree.
the
But
rest
you
of my...
get it from mum and dad. This is what they did all of their life until they died.
Yeah.
You're
but-
repeating what they did.
Yeah, I realise I am repeating, but they never liked what they did either.
No, I agree, but they did it for the same reason.
Approval
From
to
society, from the world generally, from this is what a parent does, the definition of what a parent or a good person does. That's what you're holding on to.
who? So... yeah.
That's what I said, the umbilical cord hasn't broken on the subject of approval of the world.
So maybe I'm just trying to be the good person.
Well, yeah, but it's it's your definition of a good person, or more specifically, your
Yeah.
parents' definition of a good person.
Yes.
It's not God's definition.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
No, I'm realising that.
Because,
more and more.
like, if a person's intellectually disabled, they are capable of thinking like a 3-year-old child, generally.
Yes.
Right? Now, a 3-year-old child is capable of actually understanding some basic things, such as that if it spends more money than it gets, it's going to be in trouble. A 3-year-old child is capable of understanding that. I understood it when I was 3.
Yeah. I guess too, I don't have much faith in the system. Like.
See, now you're coming up with the excuses.
Yeah, I know.
The excuses. See, the system has been created in such a way to correct problems like this to a degree. In the sense that if your brother had to experience for a short period of time at least what it's actually like in the world if he doesn't take responsibility for his finances, do you think that he would then want to take responsibility for his finances? He'll have a much stronger desire to take responsibility then, once he's experienced it, than he will with you rescuing him all the time. That's the reality.
Yeah.
Every time you rescue him, you teach him that he's allowed to do anything he wants and you'll rescue him.
Yeah.
And you don't like it. You're not doing it for love.
No. Well, I'm realising that now.
You're doing it for approval.
Yeah.
And that's not love.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
No.
So you're not doing it for a loving reason. You're doing it for a fear-based reason. And of course it's going to result in more pain for him and you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But you don't want to come to terms with what is going on here with the family.
Yeah.
You want to believe you're over it. You want to believe that that you're your own person and that you've got none of your mum and dad's definitions.
Oh,
And it's not true.
No, that's right.
It's not true. Your very life is being governed by some of these definitions
Definitely.
that you have yet to let go of.
Yeah.
You see? And this is what we do constantly. We convince ourselves that we're actually developed as an adult. But you know, an adult, a fully developed adult from God's perspective, is a person who takes personal responsibility for everything. Takes personal responsibility and is loving in every situation, no matter what anybody thinks of them. No matter whether the world disapproves, whether their family disapproves, whether their friends disapprove, they still live in harmony with love and truth every single time. That's what a person who's got a relationship with God and who, from God's perspective, is growing up. The majority of the people on the planet are not growing up. I meet 80-year-olds every day, totally not grown up. They're just immature children.
Yeah. It's funny because it was only the day before yesterday he rang and asked for $100, and for the first time I said, no, I can't give you any more money now. Mm-hmm. And he actually said he understood.
The reality is,
So,
because of his disability, he's going to understand better than the average adult in the same situation is going to understand.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
I find he does have quite a lot of understanding on different things.
Definitely.
It can be quite surprising.
Definitely.
Yeah.
He knows that he can get away with certain things with you because, and to be honest with you, a lot of it's to do with the spirits with him rather than him himself.
Yeah.
Like he's choosing to do specific things because the spirits with him know they can get away with it with you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so they give her a ring. She'll give you some.
Yeah.
Like, stop the account. She'll still have you in the house.
Yeah.
And there's no consequence. But in God's universe, the way God's created everything in the universe, there is always consequence. So you're preventing the consequence through your actions. which is not a loving thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
And once he feels that consequence, you might find 1 week later he decides to pay the rent.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thanks, AJ.
And this is the thing that we need to also learn with our children.
Yeah.
Because your brother's actions are very similar to the average 3-year-old or 4, 5, 6-year-old, 7-year-old child who's totally manipulating their parents, totally pushing them around, totally getting them to do what they want all the time. And the parent bends over backwards because they're addicted to the concept of family. They're addicted to the concept of what makes me a nice mum, what makes me a good dad. And their addictions to those concepts, which are all false, drive most of their behaviour. It's not anything to do with love. It's not like, do you think the average parent who goes out every single night taking their child to basketball, football practice, music practice, do you think they want to do that? After they've gone to work for 8 hours during the day, do you think they want to do that? The average parent doesn't want to do that. Why are they doing it? Because they're addicted to the concept of what makes them a good father or mother. And in the process, they let their children just control the rest of their lives until they're 20. And a lot of times beyond that. That's why now, you look on the earth, now there's a lot of 30-year-old males still living with their families. Why are they still living with their families? Because it's great, you don't have to grow up, right? You still get everything, your mum still washes your clothes and makes your meal for you, and you don't have to take any personal responsibility, right? and these are all the definitions of, and we do it. The reason why we do it is because we have the addiction. So the reason why you're doing it is because you have the addiction, not him. In fact, I feel that his addiction would be corrected very rapidly, given his mental state, in comparison to the average adult, if you had actually acted in more harmony with love. Does that make sense? Yeah. Whereas the average adult would have a big spit and get all angry and upset and, accuse you of all the things that you're afraid of being accused of, by taking some action that's actually loving to yourself and to them. Yeah. You had a question? You have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, just with the other siblings not having anything to do with the brother, is that them just rebelling against the umbilical cord with the parents?
Well, there's a lot of things, rage with their parents for what their parents have done, but also there's a lot of fear involved in stuff to do with mental illnesses or some kind of illnesses that are relating to the development of the child, and there's a lot of fear involved in that for a lot of people, and they don't want to even acknowledge. And years ago, what used to happen is that if a person was born in the family who developed slowly or didn't develop at all, generally what they would do is they'd put them in some kind of asylum and just not even acknowledge them as their child anymore, because there's huge amounts of community-based shame and other emotions. So, but what the rest of the family feels is immaterial, because you can't change them.
Yeah, but would they still have the umbilical cord similar, still wanting the approval
of
from
course,
the parents?
but it's more based upon rage rather than
Yep.
approval.
Yep.
I'm angry with mum and dad for having a child that was, that was poorly developed.
Yep.
Right? I'm ashamed of being a member of this family who has a child that's poorly developed. Those kind of emotions often then cause the rejection, the opposite feeling. So instead of seeking approval, you seek the opposite thing. You don't want to even know the family or something like that as a result.